Hi, my name's Vicky, and I've built nearly 3,000 fashion brands, many from scratch and many through the Fashion Brand Bootcamp. And in this video, I'm going to share with you my total brand thinking system blueprint. Basically, the system that has built every single one of the fashion brands that me and my team have worked on, or helped others who come through our Fashion Brand Bootcamp. They learn the system, and then we adapt that system to suit them. Now, usually if you're looking to build a fashion brand, it can be for many reasons. Whether you just want to turn a passion into a business, maybe you want your designs to be recognized by the fashion elite, or you maybe want to help someone. You might want to build a product that helps people's lives, something that can help a health problem, or even support a craft community somewhere in the world. Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you my blueprint, and it will help you to build a really successful fashion brand. Before we start, many people ask me who the system works for. And when I say everyone, they usually look at me as though I'm crazy. Well, this is the secret. The system itself does work for everybody. It's a particular system that goes from start to finish. What makes it different and what makes it successful is how you apply that system to your specific needs, your specific brand, your specific market. So it doesn't matter whether you're looking to build a handmade niche company, whether you're looking to be a global success, luxury, value market, wholesale, or something with your own name on it. It doesn't matter. The system itself works for everybody. It's the tailoring that makes it successful. If you've ever watched my YouTube channel, read my blog, or read my weekly email list, you'll know that I don't promise quick fixes. There are no silver bullets to anything. And building a fashion brand is no different. 98% of fashion brands fail within the first 3 years because people listen to the wrong advice. Maybe they just don't put the work in, or they don't take the time to build really strong fashion brand foundations, because it's a business at the end of the day. Even if you're selling clothes and you're really creative, you've still got to run a business behind the brand. So what I'm going to show you in the system is not going to happen overnight. I never promise quick silver bullet fixes, these magical things that will just launch you into fame and fortune in 10 minutes. It doesn't. It requires some work, it requires some research, and it requires some planning. But with the right advice, then I would hope after 20 years and nearly 3,000 brands built from scratch, I'm pretty good at that. And this is a plan, this is a system that I've developed over those 20 years of experience, knowledge, working for companies and creating brands myself. So previously I talked about listening to the wrong advice. It's why 98% of fashion businesses fail in the first 3 years. So I want to reassure you a little bit and give you some of my background. I started 20 years ago, I mentioned that already, in the fashion industry. I went through traditional means. I knew what I wanted to do, went to university, started off in the big wide world, at the bottom, of course. And my dad actually gave me a really good piece of advice. He always maintained that you don't get great at your own job just by knowing your job. You get really good at it by learning everybody else's around you. So that's what I did. I basically absorbed all the different roles of the buyers, the QC, everybody who worked in the system, whichever job I was in. Some companies were bigger, some were smaller. So it was really varied, and I gained a lot of experience from factories to measurements and different fabrics, and even how color plays a role. So when a few of my friends started thinking about kind of doing their own fashion brand, they all kind of started up, and we'd have conversations about problems they were having, issues that they couldn't quite work out. And because I guess I'd kind of seen a lot of stuff, including things that went really well and how not to do things as well, I had a lot of advice to give, although I didn't really see it as advice at the time. And when my first friend came back and had kind of changed his situation, I was really happy for him. It was great. He was really struggling with money, and I managed to, well, not me, he did all the work, but just from our conversation, he managed to use what I'd given him and turn that around, increasing his sales and making the business profitable in 3 months. My second friend, who again, similar thing, had a conversation, she was really struggling in getting her products to the right buyers. So we talked about, buying systems and how it all worked and how you needed to have consistency in a brand, etc. And she went away, put some documents together, did it properly, spent some time on it, and within 5 months, she'd actually gone from not being able to open any doors in the buying world to having her line stocked in 3 of the biggest department stores in the UK. She's actually now a global brand, and I'm so proud of her, actually. She's done so well. But by the time it kind of got to the 7th or 8th friend, I can't remember which, I suddenly realized that I had something to offer people. I realized I had this kind of system that I hadn't realized I already had. And that was the start of the total brand thinking system. And it's something that I've refined. We fast forward 20 years in my own business, building other people's fashion brands. I've tried and tested it on nearly 3,000 brands now. Some were personal clients, others have come through the bootcamp, but all of them have used the total brand thinking system, and it's what I'm going to share with you today. Now, you might be wondering how one system can work for every single type of brand, every market, every product. And actually, the bootcamp, you can learn that in just 42 hours. Well, it's actually very simple. It might sound too good to be true, but it's actually not. The system itself, I've developed over years and years and years. I worked out that every large and small brand, successful brand, actually uses the same system, whether they know it or whether they don't. And that's what started my blueprint, my total brand thinking system. After I worked out what it was and how to do it, I then tested it on lots and lots of different clients, tweaking it as I went over a few years. Now, the reason that you can learn it in 42 hours and that applies to everybody is because there's just one system. Every brand works on this one system. What makes each brand different and what makes the system work for them is the small little tweaks, the tailoring of that system onto your brand and your market and your customer and your product. So everyone starts at the same place and you just mold it around what it is you're trying to do as a fashion brand. So without any more delays, I'm going to get into the blueprint and I'm going to cover all of the bits that are in it right now.
So this is the total brand thinking blueprint system. As you can see, there are main cogs in the middle and some boxes around the outside. These boxes are called my 3Cs: core values, consumer profiles, and consistency. The 3Cs are important to building strong business foundations, regardless of what you want to sell and who you want to sell to. They're our main focus across every session in the Fashion Brand Bootcamp, and they're the secret to success. These C's, especially consistency, are the parts of building a brand that change your regular business into a successful business. And although they look pretty straightforward, these intangible things are often really hard to achieve without some professional help. And getting them wrong or not doing them at all is pretty much why 98% of new fashion brands fail within the first 3 years of starting. As I mentioned before, I spend a lot of time throughout the bootcamp tailoring each business, which is why numbers are kept small. The tailoring allows me to focus on applying the core values, customer profile, and consistency to each and every brand. So let's have a look at our cogs. At first look, the cogs can seem a little bit overwhelming, can't they? There's quite a lot of things going on there. But actually, when you break down all parts of each main cog, which represents each stage of developing your business, there are in fact far more subtopics or mini cogs than you can probably think of. So let me show you an example. This is our main marketing cog. Marketing looks at how you choose to share your products with the world, in most cases to gain sales. But how you do that can be vast and varied. In this example, if we follow the path from sales, it then goes to social media, then YouTube, to your own channel. Your final choice is what you put on your channel in terms of content. And every single pathway is going to be different for each and every type of business and customer profile. So as we go back to our main cog picture and then think about all of those sub-items for each of the cogs, you'll see that there could be lots of things to think about, but don't panic. The good news is that in my system, in Total Brand Thinking, the 3 C's and a little bit of common sense takes away many of the confusing options that we showed in our marketing example, leaving you with only a few to choose from and stopping you from being overwhelmed by information. And if your research is done right, with a little effort at the beginning, then you can reduce your options even more. Spending time researching your customer profile should tell you exactly which option to choose at every time, at every stage, which means you can feel confident in your choices because they've come from real-world research, not guesses. So with that explained, let's go through the main cogs. So let's start with our first cog, brand. Brand has 4 subtopics that we need to think about: identity, values, graphical design, and touch points. Your brand identity is so important in today's world. Fashion brands no longer sell products, they sell a lifestyle or image, and your brand identity is what consumers will be drawn to or turned off by. Your identity forms the basis of what you represent and stand for, but it's reflected in so many other parts of your brand, like marketing, products, packaging, and so on. Your values are your core values, which we talked about earlier on in this video. The reason I call them core values is because they should be at the core of your brand. Although they specifically come under the topic of brand, for a successful business, they should be reflected in everything you do. Graphical design refers specifically to, and yes, you guessed it, the way you represent your brand graphically. This covers anything from your business card to your brand logo, and there is a lot to think about here, like fonts, colors, and so on. But it might surprise you that I recommend you do this towards the end of your brand building journey, and I cover this in much more detail on the bootcamp. Touch points are basically anywhere that a customer can touch your brand, either physically or virtually. This topic covers all sorts of things from labeling to website design, and it's so important that I devote an entire session to that on the bootcamp. It's about creating a customer experience that customers will appreciate and love, but it must also be appropriate rather than a novelty, which is harder to get right. Market research is a really important factor of building your brand. In fact, it's one of our C's, customer profile, which is created from doing market research. The insight that you gain from doing this work will give you many of the answers and remove a lot of the stress that we discussed a moment ago in our fake marketing example. Knowing your customers allows you to focus on your marketing, refine your products, and increase your sales volume, so it really shouldn't be underestimated. Creating your brand or personal story as a designer is so important when you communicate and attract potential buyers to your brand. Having an effective story that customers like or buy into because it reflects them or their lifestyle is a really powerful tool in increasing sales and developing strong customer loyalty long term. But it can't be forced. Fake or inauthentic stories can be spotted a mile off by consumers, and if it's done badly, can actually put customers off. Customer retention is really important to your business. It's far easier to keep a happy customer than find new ones, so you must consider how you treat them at every stage of their experience with you. During the bootcamp, I talk about this in relation to touch points because quite often, especially in online retail, the two merge together in far more ways than we realise. Actually, during this session, many bootcampers are surprised by examples they have in their own lives with brands that they buy from and start to see how and why they are so effective for sales and customer loyalty. So let's move on to our business cog, the third out of our 7 cogs. Benchmarking is a critical part of working out where you fit into the big wide world of retail. Through comparing what your brand represents and offers to others in your retail space, you can find points of strength and weakness, things to promote and things to improve. If done properly, benchmarking helps you to gain more customers, even stealing them away from rivals, but only if you can be honest with yourself and honest about what you offer. Benchmarking is just as much about your brand as it is about others. Identifying your competition can sometimes seem quite easy. X does this and Y does that, therefore they're my competition. But where brands often fall down is that they don't research this enough. Think about the hundreds of thousands of brands there are across the world. Coming up with 2 off the top of your head just isn't going to help you. In the bootcamp, I devote an entire session to this, to help bootcampers refine their searches, find the right competition out of the thousands there are to choose from, and help them to really analyse them effectively, because that is the key to increasing sales. For most fashion businesses, there are 3 main business models. That's your own brand, wholesale, and the department store. But actually, each of these have a lot of different options, and you have to be careful about which ones you choose or how you combine them for each individual brand. They have to be tailored to each customer profile, core values, and products. It's like a very ornate and intricate game of Tetris, finding all of the right pieces that fit together to make a whole. This area is where I help my bootcampers to tailor their brands effectively, taking all of the small, intricate details and combining them together to create a fine-tuned, successful brand. So let's move on to design and trends. As you can see, this section is actually 2 cogs combined into one. In the old days, fashion trends used to play a really big part in building a fashion business. And although they haven't completely gone away, retail has changed a lot in the last 10 years and trends have become far less important. So I do keep it in there, but I tend to combine design and trends together and really tailor them depending on where your market is, the product, and how niche of a brand you're going to produce. Trademarks, copyright, and IP kind of all come together. In design and branding, trademarks, copyright, and intellectual property, or IP for short, are subjects that most people think they understand, but actually they're far more complex than people realise. These are legal areas of design and branding that require a better understanding, especially when it comes to design. In many cases, my team have to alter designs given to us because if we didn't, they'd be infringing copyright law and could actually be opening themselves up to lawsuits, which means you may be out of business before you begin. In terms of branding, even if you give your brand your own name, you must be aware which bits are protected by copyright and which bits are not. This is definitely an eye-opening session for boot campers that has saved many of them from potential lawsuits. Tech packs are, well, technical. Even if you're not intending on doing them yourself, understanding them could save you a lot of time and stress. You'll know what a proper one looks like and what they should contain if you're hiring somebody else to do them for you. But I'm told by many boot campers that the most surprising side effect of doing this session is how it changes mindset. By looking at the reality of clothing rather than a design, previous boot campers have become far more efficient and effective designers, allowing them to play with techniques, fabrics, and design while reducing costs for you as a brand and attracting more sales where customers see more value. Manufacturing and the sampling process is a vast and complicated process. It depends on the factory you choose and the products you want to make. Many new brands get delayed or charged for additional samples that they wouldn't need if they had accurate information up front. Understanding the process from start to finish will allow you to be far more aware of what happens behind the scenes. It will help you to communicate with factories efficiently, and ultimately, the more you're informed, the cheaper and quicker this process will be for you as a new brand owner. Since this is the part of the process that will provide the products you want to sell, it's essential that it all goes well. So let's move on to our marketing cog. If consistency is the key to a successful fashion brand, then you need something to be consistent about. Your message is part of the communication you have with potential customers, verbally, graphically, and emotionally. It combines many parts of your business, including your core values and brand identity, and it must be reflected in everything you do if it's to work efficiently. Wholesale is part of building your business that some people embrace straight away and others focus on later in their business building journey. But dealing with this topic of wholesale and buying actually mirrors a lot of the documentation and legal issues that you'll have with factories as well. When my boot campers realise how the roles of buyers and sellers move around, depending on the situation they're in, and they're armed with the documentation they need to survive, wholesale suddenly opens up a large knowledge base that can be applied to all kinds of situations. Sales will either keep your business alive or kill it in year one. Ultimately, you need sales to keep revenue moving through your business, which allows you to create more products next season. But how you increase your sales revenue comes from a number of things we've already covered: your message, marketing, core values, customer profile, and so on. The good news is that if your brand foundations are done correctly, this part will fall into place. So let's move on to our last cog, product, which has the most amount of subtopics in the whole system. Purchase orders are legal documents that can be confusing. Although it's not the only legal document that you have to fill in throughout your journey, it's a significant one. This will be the contract you give your factory, and getting it wrong can mean huge losses financially. It's so important that I spend time going through each and every part of it to make sure that you, as a brand owner, know what you need to do at the time or know what to look out for if you receive one from a buyer. Shipping is not the sexiest topic in the world to talk about, I know. But whether you're talking about shipping to customers or products from a factory, it's an important part of your journey. Delays can cause repercussions with buyers or customers, and if you're waiting for products from a factory, you might miss out on key events. At the very least, you'll need to plan around deliveries, so understanding the process, even at a basic level, will definitely improve your organization and business planning. Range development can be quite exciting, especially when you've worked on a close group of products, but getting your offering right can be a little more tricky. When we think of developing ranges, often our brains make leaps that make sense to us personally because of associations or personal preference. But in a business setting, expanding your range needs to be a carefully planned process. There are two ways of doing it, and depending on your customer, product range, and budget, each one has benefits and drawbacks. Going wide means you offer more products. Going deep means you extend the options customers have on the products you offer. Boot campers often find that when we finish this session, their initial ideas for expansion, whether now or in the future, are very different than when they started. Creating value for customers can mean different things. The most important, though, is product value. Regardless of the price of the product, you have to give your customer a reason to open their wallets and buy. Whether you do this through clever design, customer experience, or your brand, you need to show customers that your product has value that others don't. Adding value to a product can be a puzzle that you need to solve, but don't worry. Boot campers get the benefit of my guidance to make sure that it's done properly and ultimately increase their sales. This means more sales for you, a stronger business for the future, and happy customers. Pricing products might seem fairly easy, but as I've discovered over the years, there are many common misconceptions that people have when they do this. Brands are tempted to either price low because they want sales or high because they believe they can, and often sales stagnate. The brain is a funny thing, and customers place a lot of emphasis on the right price of a product. Too high and there's not enough value, even if it's covered in diamonds. Too low and it's bad quality or cheap. Getting the balance just right is important for customer sales, but also reflects the profits you make and can be the difference between a company folding or a stable and successful business that will create your future. Your critical path is about sampling. In terms of products, it has a lot to do with time and the speed you can get your products into your store. But it also has a knock-on effect in terms of your finances and contract commitments, and it can make or break a budget. This all sounds quite difficult, doesn't it? But it comes back to the right knowledge. Having a full understanding of your critical path, knowing how, where, and when it all works together, will keep everything running smoothly, even first time round. So now that we've covered some of the subtopics and the main cogs in this video, I want to just point out a couple more notes for you. A lot of the topics that we've already talked about don't just sit in one particular cog, they actually cover 2 or 3. So for example, in the last section in product, we talked about something called value. And yes, it does relate to product, but it also relates to design and brand and customers. There's no linear way of going from one end of the system to the other because all parts of the system work from one part to the next part. And that's why we have our 3 C's: consistency, customer profiles, and core values. It helps to keep everything that you do and everything that we discover in the Fashion Brand Bootcamp consistent using the customer profile and the core values. So I want to go back and explain why they're so important to your brand and why they're important to the total brand thinking system. In the last few years specifically, the internet has had a revolutionary effect on selling products. Social media has changed the game. In the good old days, consumers had the choice of products and brands that they either passed near their home on their way to work or made special conscious journeys into city centres for something special. Brand names didn't have as much effect on people's buying habits as they liked to think. Basically, if it wasn't in a physical store, convenient to people's lives, then they just didn't buy it. That's why stores grew into countrywide or global chains. It put the physical products in front of people's physical eyes. Even in the early days of the internet, information was the game, and e-commerce, selling goods online, wasn't a thing. I know because I remember life before the internet and mobile phones, and saw the internet change into what it is today. People who sold products focused on customer service, providing a special experience where customers felt appreciated, not necessarily on brand names and values. This has always been different, of course, for the luxury market, where everything is based on brand name, but in general, the name was enough to sell. Customers usually walked in, loved something, paid for it because they had a great experience in the store itself, and then left. Not only that, they came back because they felt valued. In this respect, nothing much has changed, even if you're selling online, but the internet and social media has completely changed the game, especially in the last few years, and many brands just haven't caught up. The internet has allowed customers to go from shopping locally to shopping globally, which means that the competition for sales is much greater. And as a new fashion brand, you're competing with all of them, but without the established brand name to rely on. So why would consumers come to you and not go to others? And why have the big brands not caught up? The reason is that brands, or at least the ones who don't work with me, completely miss the point. Yes, your branding and marketing have to be consistent. Yes, they have to speak to your customer. And yes, they have to attract customers by reflecting attitude and lifestyle. But, and here's the secret, brand name is no longer the most important thing to customers. With so much choice and so many brands and so many countries to choose from, brand names are a currency that mean very little these days. Because unlike 10 years ago when most people knew what every name stood for, now there are so many that they just can't keep up. This has led to consumer brand loyalty shrinking. Customers focus more on what a brand stands for and its reputation in a niche community rather than the name on its own. And that's why I focus so much on my 3 C's. Your core values now replace brand name. Your customer profile means that you can understand and communicate with your customers better. And consistency, the biggest part of the total brand thinking system, is what pulls every part of the system together. And that's the secret to my total brand thinking system.
So that was my total brand thinking blueprint. I know it's a really short introduction, but if you can imagine trying to fit in 20 years worth of experience and knowledge and 3,000 clients worth of examples into a short video, you can see how hard that can be. But the point of the video was to show you that one system can work for any brand, whether you're new, existing, luxury, or value. But for any brand following any system, what turns that system from a business into a really successful fashion business is how you adapt that system, how you tweak and adapt all the different bits of information to suit your customers, your market, and your products. And that's where the Fashion Brand Bootcamp comes in. The bootcamp itself allows me to have personal time with every person on the bootcamp course, and it helps me as they learn the system themselves. I tweak all the information that they learn. So I'm really adapting everything that they're doing to suit them, to suit their brand that they want to build, their goals, the future that they see in front of them. So if you're all ready to take action and create not just a business, but a successful fashion business, then I'd really love you to join me on the Fashion Brand Bootcamp. And if you are ready to take that step, here's how it works. So although I'd love to be able to teach this all day, every day, throughout the year, unfortunately I can't. I do have other clients that I have to work with and other commitments that I have with me and my team. So I can only do this twice a year. And we have 2 different versions. We've got a Western time zone and we've got an Eastern time zone. Every session is done via webinar, but don't worry, it's all me, all live. There's no pre-recorded information. The tailoring is the thing that makes the Fashion Brand Bootcamp different from every other course online, every book you might read, or anything else that you might be trying to use to build your fashion brand. It's the difference between building a fashion business and a successful fashion business, and I take it really, really seriously. That's why I ask each and every person who participates with me to fill in a bit of a questionnaire just so I can get to know you, and so that from day one you can learn the whole system with every option and every piece of information that you need, tried and tested, but so that I can guide you specifically to the parts that are going to work really, really well for your goals and the future that you're trying to create. Whether you're on the Eastern Bootcamp or the Western Bootcamp, each one is only 12 sessions long. That's 42 hours of your life that could change your future. Now, there's no excuse. I specifically do these in the evenings. It means you can do your day job if you're working currently. It means if you've got kids, you can put them to bed and then really sit down and focus. Because the point of the bootcamp is not just to make sure that you have a successful fashion brand at the end, but it's to make sure that you take action. You're never actually going to have a business if you don't take that first step. So as we go through all of the sessions, the 12 sessions, you're going to be building your business right then and there with me. The Western webinar starts on the 27th of March, which is really soon, and finishes on the 13th of April. So you haven't got long to register, and we've got a couple of places left. The Eastern starts on the 8th of May and finishes on the 31st of May. So you've got a little bit more time for that one. And they're not just restricted to people in the UK or in Hong Kong, where I'm based. You can choose whichever time zone suits you wherever you are in the world. You can visit the website below for more details on each and every session on the bootcamp and get more details on it overall. But don't leave it too long. places are limited and I have to limit them because otherwise I just don't have time to tailor all of that information for every boot camper and build successful fashion brands for you. And I only do this once a year, as I've said. So if you miss it, you miss it. And if they're full, they're full. But I really, really hope that I meet you on the boot camp this year. I know what a difference that this course can make to people's lives and people's futures. And I really, really hope that it's going to change yours.